people in real estate. And even though I say that every single time, this one is going to be a good one. And we have actually been planning this one since last October. So we are going to be talking to Susie Ellis, who we met at the unofficial Real Geeks user conference. And she's got some real unique aspects to her career that we can't wait to dive into. And so let's just jump right into it. Or actually, hang on, I'll push pause. Before we do that, if you're liking these things, go down, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. It really helps us know which content you're liking and what to bring you more of. Okay, now with that, that's done. Susie, welcome. And give us a little background on who you are and where you're at.
Well, my name is Susie Ellis. I'm selling real estate in Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, of all places. So it's located in the Midwest. We are a secondary home market, a resort market primarily. Mostly I do a lot of everything, I guess. I do luxury. I really specialize in luxury, but I do it all. So
excellent. But you didn't always used to be in Lake of the Ozarks. So where'd you start your real estate career?
I started my career in Long Beach Island, New Jersey. It's a barrier island about 50 miles from Atlantic City. We're about 50 miles north. It was 18 miles long by about 6 blocks wide. And 6 miles of that is a wildlife sanctuary. So not a lot of real estate to sell there. So that's where I started my career.
All right. And so the major challenges, just restricted inventory. What kind of market was that?
So it was just super interesting because, I had a house there and it was a real high-end luxury market that was changing. So back in the day, it was like little cottages on a little barrier island, and which morphed into mega mansions on a barrier island. And so what we had is a lot of big homes and, kind of older cottages. And that was kind of our inventory. We had about 7 different little towns, and a very entrenched group of agents that had been there forever. And this was I can't even tell you how many years ago it was, maybe 30 years ago, 25, that I've been selling real estate. And so it was back in the day before really computers and the technology we have today. So if you wanted to come rent a house, there was no VRBO. You had to actually call me or come to the island and take a look at what we had to offer for rentals. And these were very, very high-end rentals. And that's how I got started. I got started doing rentals and being able to, show people these homes and rent them. And that was fine for me. I had a partner. I worked 6 months a year. He worked 6 months a year. I really didn't care about selling anything. I was kind of scared. I didn't know what I was doing for sure, because he worked 6 months. I worked 6 months. When it was his time to go, he just left. And I was like, okay, well, I got to figure this out. So that's how I started my career. And that's where I came from, which morphed into becoming one of the most productive selling agents on the Eastern Seaboard. Definitely becoming number one in my market, figuring it out, because when it was my turn to go away for the wintertime, Jack left me and I had this business by myself. And I just decided, okay, I need to figure this out. And it organically grew. I had no idea what I was doing, truthfully. I just treated people how I wanted to be treated. That was how I did it.
The golden rule. So
yeah.
In retrospect, what were the most important things that you learned during that period? What were the most hard-won lessons?
Oh my God, there's so many. Number one was what I've learned in a secondary market is there's a very, very entrenched groups of entitled agents. So they think they own the market. Who are you? You're an interloper. You're coming in. And you cannot let that scare you. You can't let those people intimidate you. I did for a couple, maybe a year, and then I realized very quickly, listen, obviously I'm here. I'm going to do a job. People like me. They want to use me. And I'm just going to stop being intimidated by you. I just am going to plow ahead and do what I do, how I do it, and see where I go. And it took me about 14 months till I was number one.
I mean, all things considered, that seems pretty fast.
Well, you have to remember that I started for a season, about almost 2 seasons of just doing rentals. So I had the people whose homes I rented who wanted to sell. And then I had this clientele coming in who were renting that I'm like, why are you renting? My God, do you know how much money you're paying? You need to buy, and then I'll rent your house out. We can make this cash flow for you.
Airbnb before Airbnb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, you can be here whenever you want, and I can show you how to do that because I can get you the income you need to carry this property.
So you were able to parlay the relationships that you built in rental into home buying.
Correct.
Excellent. Yep. Excellent. Yep. I was going to ask where the leads came from in these days, but it sounds like you just answered that.
That's it. That's where they came from. And doing open houses. Like I did everything how everybody told me not to. Like I was doing open houses on a barrier island in the wintertime, you know, where people are like, nobody comes down. These owners aren't around. Well, they are. They come down and they check their properties. And the only person who's working on a crappy Saturday afternoon in January was me. And they'd stop in my open house. They'd start talking to me. They'd use me to sell their homes and then refer me to their neighbors and everybody else. And it just very, very quickly grew. I mean, very quickly grew.
That's so funny because I feel like that's such a, I mean, the odd hours is certainly an interesting thing with real estate, right? But it seems like that you used, like when the tourists are there on their vacation, you were there to work. Yep. And totally, you know, used it to your advantage.
Yeah, because I'm like, okay, here's the deal. It's a crappy day. We didn't have, you know, people online looking at properties to rent or anything. So it was like, if you knew the roads were crappy or whatever, I was like, well, I can sit home and hang out or do whatever because I'm really not working today. And or I can go sit in this house I have listed and try to see if I can get somebody in it. So that's what that was my mindset.
Yeah.
Of, you know, this is how you work. You're available. So.
Yeah. At that point, were you considered, like, by the people that lived on the island or the you know, people that owned there, were you considered to be a local, or as you were a new real estate agent, were you also seen as an outsider?
Well, it was so funny because I worked for Ernst & Young in healthcare consulting. I had my place in Manhattan in New York City, and I also had a home at the beach. And my kids went to school down there, but nobody knew me. Nobody knew who I was. I really was a local because I had already lived there for like 5 or 6 years, but nobody really knew who I was. I wasn't this entrenched agent that, you know, everybody knew. Because there were probably about 50 agents on the island, probably 25 that really, really did business. And then, of course, like 7 that owned the market. Yeah. Well, I wanted to go up against the 7 that owned the market, but nobody knew me. So how do you get your name out there? Well, back in the day, we couldn't have any billboards on this island. There wasn't Facebook like it is today. I mean, there was nothing. You just had to get in front of people. That's what you had to do.
So if I'm doing like you know, the book of Susie and there's chapters, right? You know, so chapter 1, healthcare consultant, chapter 2, real estate agent on a barrier island. How long were you in that market, and then where did you go after?
So I was in that market about 13 years. And then I got married and my husband lived in Alaska. So that was like a whole spiel. I'd been a single mom.
Susie, this is the thing that I love talking to you, you know, when we had dinner, because it's like, there's so many little plot twists, you know?
I know. I used to rent my properties out. So I bought a bunch of properties and then I rented them out. And I stayed on my boat in the summer. And so I'm sitting on my boat and my daughters come and they graduated from college and everything. And they're like, Mom, you know, there may be a time we are not going to be with you for Christmas. I'm like, what? So maybe it's time you should meet somebody. So I was single mom forever. I'm like, well, who am I meeting on this barrier island? I mean, like, that would be a big fat nobody, except for the toothless fisherman. So I'm like, that's not going to work for me. Not dating clients. So I said, and they're like, you need to go online. So I did. I went on plentyoffish.com and I looked at people all over, and I saw this picture of this guy in Alaska, and he was super cute. And I just looked at him. That's it. He was in Russia. He was like with the State Department doing stuff. And when he got home, he saw that I looked at him, and he's like, oh, you know, you look nice, but I'm not interested in a long distance relationship. To which I said, well, I didn't ask you to marry me. Thus it began. We ended up meeting and getting married 3 months later.
Do we need to talk about handling objections in the dating world?
We could also do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I met him. We got married. Well, he was retiring. So he came to LBI and had a property in Florida. So we kind of bounced around between those two. And then he got a call to come up. He was asked to be the director of state parks for Alaska. It's a job he always wanted. He's super outdoorsy. Mm-hmm. And so he went, and then we commuted to see each other. And then finally I'm like, listen, this is stupid. Why am I married? You know, I'm like, I'm not even going to a bar for a drink because, you know, whatever. So I moved out there and started real estate there.
Okay. So packed up, moved not just to the other coast, but to Alaska.
Correct.
All right. So we're in Alaska. We're on chapter 3 now.
Right. So I moved to Anchorage, Alaska.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, wow, it snows a lot here. So, and I moved in the winter.
Yep.
And it was the snowiest, coldest winter on record. So that was challenging. But I had heard about this gal, and she owned a ton of land in Anchorage. Mm-hmm. Because Anchorage doesn't really have, as big as this state is, a lot of land for houses. So she had bought most of the available land for big housing tracts, like to have 40 houses or 100 houses. And so what she did is she would sell to a builder only if they would use her to market the property. And so, but she was not particularly well loved.
Yep.
And rubbed people the wrong way. So I'm like, okay, well, listen, I'll do your open houses for you and, work with you. So again, that's what I started doing is open houses. And then I started selling a lot of property there. And then people would call me on the phone and, want to know about these houses, and they'd fly in. A lot of people didn't even come look at them. We just sold them, sight unseen.
So I got a bunch of questions about this. So,
okay.
How did you make that connection with the landowner? Was that had you read a newspaper article about her, or was that a
No, my husband had been up in Alaska for 30 some years. And
okay. So he knew her.
Yeah. The whole state's a very, very small town. Truthfully, Everybody knows everybody, especially at the level he was. And he's like, well, there's this lady. Well, also I looked at where to go to work. I mean, there was, Keller Williams, a Remax, all these mom and pops, blah, blah, blah. She was a mom and pop. And I just called her one day and I said, here's my background. It's very luxury because at that time, Long Beach Island, I mean, entry level housing there was $1 million and that was for a tear down. And so I said, I kind of feel like I have the experience, and are you looking for somebody? And she was like, yeah, come in and talk to me. And then we, had so much in common because they knew my husband, and, her husband was, this water guy, and the whole thing just kind of meshed. So
you kind of used your sphere to open the door, but you had a definitive value proposition, and then you were able to get right to work.
Yeah. I was pretty upfront. I'm like, this is what I do. This is how I do it. I'm pretty independent. I'm not shy anymore like I kind of used to be. And I mean,
Yep.
I don't really know the area, but I know how to sell a house.
Right, exactly. And so that's kind of my question. So rebooting your career, it's you found a good partner that already had like kind of hooks in, but you still got to bring in the buyers and like work through these deals.
Right, and have credibility, because I'm like, okay, I knew about riparian, I knew about ocean, I knew about tide, I knew about waterfront, bayfront, you name it. What do I know about earthquakes? Like, that's a big fat zero. So there's earthquake zones in Anchorage where, you have to have special insurance, and you probably don't want to sell in my house if I'm that ill. And, so and the way they build is different. The way they do septic is different. The way they do everything is different because of the seismic activity in Anchorage. So that was a bit of a learning curve for me. But I asked enough people and got educated enough that I felt okay, because I wouldn't want to sell somebody a house if I didn't know, what I was talking about. And then the different areas, like, where's the good areas? Where's the, probably you don't want to be there because of whatever, earthquake or the demographics or just whatever, because there's a lot of nuances to Anchorage, Alaska.
So I guess the thing that I'm curious about is what was in your toolbox of sales skills or real estate skills that allowed you to be so successful so quickly? Because it seems like there's some area specific knowledge that you just had to acquire. But
I think it's just how I approach my business in general is really listening to the client's needs. Truthfully, I am just a facilitator for them. I've never, real estate honestly is so ego driven. It's crazy. And some agents, get up to this status where they're, number one, and they think they're untouchable, or they think whatever. And I have never been that person. I'm like, listen, I'm here for a reason. I'm here for you. I am here to help you achieve your goals, period. That's the only thing I can bring to the table for you, and my knowledge of, the area or whatever. That's all I have. And that's all anybody has. So like, I'm so not the star in this transaction. You are. And I've always conducted myself like that. I've always put my clients first. And I realize what my role is in the transaction.
I think that's really good advice, and a great mindset. So you were selling primarily to people that were out of state moving into Alaska?
Yep, and step up buyers too, where they were, or people who never thought they could afford a home. I had a couple come in that never thought they could have,
How are you guys finding refresh my memory on what year this was, because we're probably not using Google Ads yet.
I've been here, that was like 9 years ago.
Okay, so maybe a little bit of Google Ads to help find your clients.
No.
So where were these leads coming from?
Answering the phone if somebody would call.
Yeah.
Or going out for dinner, and or Ben, my husband, saying, "Oh, my wife sells real estate. You should give her a call." Or open houses, really truthfully open houses. Again, open houses.
Yep. So a little bit of good old fashioned networking combined with some like just basic blocking and tackling.
Yeah. When you want to talk about technology or Google Ads or anything, that was so out of my, never, I never did anything like that. I wouldn't have done it. It was like, I wasn't interested. I was probably afraid of it. I just didn't know what I was doing. So, I'd probably rather go camping and try to figure that out.
That's good. All right. So how long were you in Alaska?
I was there for 3 years.
Okay. And then what was the chapter after that? What's chapter 4?
We decided we were retiring and moving to Florida. And I had a place on the beach, and we bought a place in a place called the Villages, Florida, where it's a huge retirement community. You go around by golf cart, super fun. So we moved there, and I started real estate there because it's like, retirement's really hard for me because I kind of felt quasi-retired in Alaska because I wasn't going 100 miles an hour. I was very successful in Alaska. In fact, people still call me from there and Long Beach Island to buy and sell their property. So I still have clients all over the place. And so when I got to the villages, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Sit in golf. And, like, what are you doing? You're sitting in the middle of Florida and it's pretty buggy. But anyways, so I decided to learn to play golf and then start selling real estate. So that's when I actually turned to the internet.
Okay. First of all, how long did the golf last before you started selling real estate again?
I'm still golfing. I can do it every day. I love it. It's my first love.
Okay. So that's stuck. I was thinking that the golf didn't stick and you went back to real estate, but
no, I loved it. But you're out on the golf course. You talk to people.
Yeah. Oh, true. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yes, I sell real estate.
Yep.
So.
So you said that's when the technology started and that's when the internet started. What tools were you using?
Yeah, because I was like, okay, listen, I don't know anybody here at all. No one, not a soul. And we moved into a brand new house. So our neighborhood wasn't finished or anything. Like, there was a house, a few houses on our street, but it wasn't like you're going to get to know a ton of people there. And I'm not a really good joiner, like with all the, like, let's go do these driveway parties and these greetings and let's all go to the club and meet and do karaoke and whatever. I'm not that girl. I'm just not that person. I try to be, but I'm like, oh God, after years of being at Ernst & Young and then on the island when I lived there, because everybody got to know me, I just don't like to talk that much. So anyway, I had a hard time getting started there. And then I was like, I figured out I actually really did know how to do real estate. I really did not know as a brand new agent, what do you do? So I went to work for Remax. And a gal who owned that, her name was Nancy Dykeman, and she owns the Remax in the Villages, that area. And she said, you need to learn how to cold call. And she took me to a Mike Ferry cold calling week, whatever. And Mike Ferry's son-in-law taught it, and he was beyond good. The guy was good. And at the end, you have to get on the phone call and call your market, where I lived in the Villages, and get listings. And of course, I was like, what? I'm going to call this total stranger and ask, hey, this is Susie. I want to sell your house. Like, what? So I had a script. Yep. Nancy was standing next to me. And I just started, and I just got out of my own head and said, listen, your house didn't sell. I can tell you why. You need me. You need me to market your home. Can I set an appointment? And thus it began.
That's pretty awesome, though, that you were able to be like a killer agent on the East Coast, move across the country, restart your career, and then move again down to Florida. And then I guess have the humility to be like, I do not possess this skill of cold calling, and dive into that yet again.
Not only possess the skill of cold calling, not even know about it. I didn't know there were companies like Vulcan that you could subscribe to, and they gave you phone numbers for these people. I had no idea. It's a whole new world for me. And I was like, because I realized I don't even know how to sell real estate other than face-to-face. And so these people just move there. They're not going to, my neighbors, they're not going to turn around and sell tomorrow. Well, a couple of them actually did, but I had no way to get clients. And, everybody is a retired real estate agent also, and is in real estate at the Villages. Like probably 100,000 real estate agents for 150,000 people that live there. You know what I mean? So, you want to talk about competition? Holy moly. It was huge.
I guess another thing that I'm picking up on here is it's like you also have this attitude of, okay, new environment, new skill, I'm going to learn that and adapt. And it seems like you've got this like open mind to figuring out like the next new thing and figuring out how to take advantage of it.
Yep. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, how am I going to sell a house today? And I need to figure that out. And that has to happen with like about 24 conversations. And I've figured that out. And if I don't do that, I'm not going to probably sell a house. Right. And I don't care how good I am in the market. You're only as good as your last sale, trust me. And so, you can think you're all that, but the reality is you need to buy and, have buyers and sellers. And you have to constantly chase it. I mean, you have your sphere and the whole thing, and I get all that and blah, 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 but it's all about conversations, real conversations with people. Like real, pick up the phone, talk to somebody.
I love this too. It's like we're on like chapter 4 or something like that at this point, and you've now retired twice, but you're still, you're telling me now, because we're kind of skipping ahead, like that you still wake up in the morning thinking, what is my personal goal for this year, and how many calls do I need to make today?
Yeah, here's my personal goal. I'm going to try to see if you can see this. I don't know if you can see this.
It's a little bit.
This is my goal every day, to make $1 million of income, which I'm used to making. After, it's not gross commission earnings, that's income to me, $1 million a year. I have to have 9 listings a month, and this is the breakdown of the price points of the listings I need to make $1 million a year. It's right next to. That's the first thing I see every morning.
There we go. Love it.
Because I want to make the money, because I'm truly at the point in my life where I want to, there's a lot of people in need that need help. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to help. And that's what I'm about.
You got a purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and I like to take really good vacations, so there's that.
Yeah, well, that helps too. Okay, so how long were you in Florida?
So we were only in Florida like 2 years.
Okay, and then where'd you go after Florida?
Well, so my husband retired, right? So we're down in Florida. He kind of was going back and forth from Anchorage to Florida a little bit. And then he finally gets down there. We're super having fun. And Missouri's governor called him and said, listen, you have the qualifications. He's kind of a turnaround guy. Ben works very well with the legislators and people in Congress and this and that. We really would like you to come and straighten our state parks out. Would you be willing to do it? And Ben's like, no. And so then they called a few more times. And I come out of the grocery store one day and Ben's like, well, I took the job in Missouri. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going. So there's that. So we commuted for a year again to see each other. And then once again, I'm like, oh, fine. And Ben's like, listen, Susie, the lake's a good market, has some really good high-end stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, what's high-end? He goes, like, there's stuff for $1 million or $2 million or $2 million here, maybe $3 million. So I visit him, I look at this lake, and I'm like, oh my God, these condos, there's like a bajillion condos on the lake. And the lake is huge, huge. And I'm like, where would I even start? This is overwhelming. Like, this is like way overwhelming to me. Like, I don't really know if I really want to do this. So he's like, oh, come on, it'll be fun. I'm like, all right. So the first 6 months, I didn't do anything. I kind of sold a few houses, and that was really about it.
Just kind of sold a few houses.
Yeah, and so
in Lake of the Ozarks or back in Florida?
No, in Lake of the Ozarks. And then
okay. Yeah. So you got there and you immediately set up shop and started getting to work. Translation.
Well, I just did Vulcan.
Okay.
But there's not that much inventory here, and I'm like, oh God, I need to like have listings. And of course, listings is where it's at. But I also needed buyers. And I also, P.S., knew nothing about this lake. Like this lake, when I tell you it's big, it's huge. And there's so much shoreline. And there's all these little windy dirt roads that you have no idea. I mean, this is a massively large mass that you can get lost in like 2 seconds flat and think you're in Deliverance. But then also, you come around a bend and there's $7 million homes sitting on the lake. You're like, what? And these driveways are totally steep because the topography, because, it's crazy. So I'm like, oh my God, I've got to learn this market. How do I do that? Well, by helping buyers, because they want to look at everything.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, how do I get buyers? Because nobody knows me at all. Like, nobody knows me. So I was like, well, maybe I should buy leads. I'd heard about that. And I'm like, okay, so how do you do that? I researched this for, I bet you 4 months, because I'm like, this is actually a huge investment to do something like this. Not only is it time-wise a huge investment, but money-wise. And so it was like Real Geeks, Sync. I never wanted to buy a lead from Zillow. I'm not a particular big fan of Zillow. They approached me when I was in Long Beach Island and said, hey, you want to buy leads from us? And I was like, who are you? I have my own leads. Like, why would I use you? And they're like, oh, and then you have to answer the phone right away. I'm like, I'm not paying you anything. You could pay me. And so they used me for a while, and that was a very short-lived thing. But anyway, so I didn't want to use Zillow. I figured really the only two real viable ones at the time when I was looking, and this was 4 years ago. I think I joined you guys 4 years ago or 3. I think I'm going into my 4th year or 3rd year. I don't really know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I picked you, and then the rest is history. I will never forget the first day I got my first lead.
How long?
I was so excited. I was dying.
So you signed up with Real Geeks, and then you signed up with Lead Generation. This is like 4 years ago. What was the interval between signing up with Real Geeks and getting your first lead?
Well, we had to create my website, which you guys had a person help me do that. And whoever signed me up, that gal, I can't remember her name. I don't think she's with you guys anymore. She was phenomenal. Phenomenal. In fact, when I got my first lead, I called her. So probably I was like so excited. Probably it was, I don't know, my website got up, it got running, and it was probably like 2 days. Yep. And I got my first lead.
That's fast. Yeah. Was that a Google lead, or was that wasn't an organic lead?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
No, like I say.
How much do you dive into like where your leads are coming from, whether it's like Google or Facebook? You just
well, now that you guys are explaining your report,
yeah,
which I'm always way off the charts on your report. Like I'm like, if you're paying, $2 or something, and mine's like 19 cents, and then it's like they only knew this. Like I feel like I should share that with you or something. Like my report that you send me every month is like. It's ungodly how many leads I get, and you guys have always managed my stuff. I've never thought, oh, I'm going to go figure all this out and put myself on Google, or why would I do that? That's not my value, stay in your lane. If you sell real estate, don't think you're going to be this tech person, because you guys do that very, 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 very well. And so I just know that, I get some yucky leads, but honest to God, you guys have totally changed my life. Seriously, when I tell you that, I'm making a lot of money here, a lot. And my first year with you, my GCI was, 600,000. My first year with you and your leads. And that's all I did was your leads.
And you've had a couple of big ones lately, right? Like a couple of big listings or closings?
Not only lately, all the time. And again, this one I'm doing right now. It's you.
What's the biggest one?
The biggest one, I doubled it. It would be about 3.8 million.
3.8. That was a closing? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But they all started with you. I mean, I do some Vulcan, but we have no inventory here, none.
Right.
Super hard to get inventory. So, and what's cool with your website is when you're in a second home market is a lot of my buyers that are on here also have homes to sell. That's the beauty of Real Geeks.
Yes.
That people don't even understand.
Okay. And so I think that you have another secret, which I think we talked about at dinner, which was you also use the nurturing capability to like keep people going over long periods of time. What's the longest interval on your Real Geek site that you've like had someone just kind of like looking at market reports until actually doing a closing with them?
This guy that I'm actually dealing with right now, he was probably signed up in, I don't know, the second month I had Geeks. And he called me and he's like, and I remember one time he called me to show my house and I was out of town and my sister was here. She was sort of working with me. And I'm like, hey, can you take this guy out? He wants to see a 1.8 or something like that.
Yeah.
And she's like, sure. I'm like, okay, great. And I never really, because I don't know, I was busy when I got back and I kind of lost track of him. He called me. No, he texted me on the site, on the texting docs, on the site, to come over and give my dad what his house was worth. You know, he'd been on the site. Everybody feels like they know you because you send them property updates every day or whatever fits their criteria. And, you know, my email, I use your stuff that you have on there. I tweaked it a little for the workflow, but they get stuff from me for what, 18 months is it, or 2 years? I don't know, whatever. But they're still getting those property reports. And so he called me or texted me on that, and I went over and met with him, and I'm like, man, I just feel like I've met you before, whatever. He's in my neighborhood, so maybe he's in our club.
Yep.
I'm in a golf community. And anyway, you know, we just get on like, why don't you? We just love each other, and he's awesome, and him and his wife are adorable, and their house is a $2 million property or 2.3, and you know, they're awesome.
So I mean, the thing that's cool about this is you are getting a lot of like fast internet leads that seems like you're able to work and close, but you're also extraordinarily patient with, you know, these really long-term nurtures. And
well, it's, you know, and that's another thing, NAR, or the National Association of Realtors, doesn't do a good job with second home resort markets. And same with any types of internet programs, these programs, like you guys do a good job advertising me, a really great job. But most of them don't. Nothing is geared towards the second home market. So it's super tough. You're not in a primary market. And so nobody needs a second home.
right.
It's a want, they would like it, but they don't need it. And so you have to create that urgency for them. But they're going to take their time. I mean, you're not going to rush these people. So you just have to kind of be patient. But also, one thing I'm really good at with Geeks is when somebody makes an inquiry or calls me, I mean, I immediately get back to them. Immediately.
Speed to lead.
Yep. I mean, it's not going to be, I'm going to do this guy in an hour or no. I mean, it is, I'm stopping what I'm doing unless I'm showing property or I'm talking to a client. And I am going to get back to the guy. And even if I'm showing property, I will text them, listen, I'm not showing property. Let me get back to you as soon as I'm done. And I love your app because it makes it so much faster to get back to people now.
The CRM app, yeah.
Yeah, instead of going to, you know, the internet and blah, blah, blah. And your app is fabulous.
Love to hear that. The product team is going to be thrilled, you know, with the compliment. So,
they're awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we are about at time. Susie, this has been awesome. I'm glad we finally got to connect again. Are you coming to the conference this year?
I already signed up there when I was there last time. I loved it. You know, you could go to, like, I work for EXP and you can go to their rah-rah stuff and all that stuff, but I learned more and I got to meet people because all of us who use you, I think we're there because we really want to build a really good business. And that's a great conference. You guys being there, Kevin being there, having dinner with y'all.
Yeah, and Todd puts it on. It is a Real Geeks user conference by Real Geeks users. We just sponsor it.
I know, I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, and Todd's a great guy. I mean, everybody there was, we're all there for the same thing, as we want to grow our businesses, so.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Susie. This has been awesome. If someone wants to find you, how do they find you?
Oh, they can text me or email me. So Ellis at SusanEllisGroup.com and or 573-286-9725. But now let's remember, you guys promised to come this summer and get on the boat, and we're going to show you Lake of the Ozarks.
We did. Okay, so everyone, this is the reason you got to go hit subscribe, because we've been planning this testimonial video that Susie wants to do, and the shot list is already pretty compelling. So this is going to be a good time.
And the gal who works with me, Kristen Stordahl, who was at that too, they have a boat that their just normal cruising speed is 80 miles an hour, and we cannot wait. And then I have the pontoon, so we cannot wait to get you guys on the water and be going about 140 miles an hour as we enjoy a cocktail on our way to dinner. So.
This is going to be the worst business trip ever.
We can't wait. So.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed this. Like I said, hit that subscribe button. And